if you know what you're looking for, you wouldn't just ask the AI, like, are you sure? That doesn't solve the problem. It's like, if you got to get the right answer, you go and check and see whether the answer is right. And there's also many, 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 many things that you run as processes that don't depend on something being 100% right. You go out creating a new idea for a new product. That's a process that needs verification. You go out into the marketplace, and you see what happens. And so I still feel like it's a massive red herring.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Steve Cunningham. We're going to chat about AI and how to implement it, along with what the future holds. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. What if the smartest person in your company wasn't a person? If you're wondering how to stay relevant, competitive, and fulfilled in a world of rapid change and AI, this episode is for you. Don't forget to check out the AI-Driven Leader episode with Jeff Woods. It was episode 440. Change is coming whether you like it or not, and understanding and using AI is going to be a core skill. I was going to say the future, but today. The longer you put it off, the further you're going to get behind. We're going to go into that today with Steve Cunningham. He is the founder of Simple and the creator of the world's first AI business school. Steve is known for his 1-week law career and 2 decades of entrepreneurial adventures. He now helps professionals thrive in an AI-powered world. He's also the author of the upcoming book, Don't Be a Turkey. Think about a turkey coming into Thanksgiving. Let's meet Steve and learn how to master AI. Welcome to Richer Soul, Steve Cunningham. It's great to have you join us today.
Glad to be here, Rocky. Thanks for having me.
And I am excited to learn from you. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Well, I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. So as you know, we were just talking just before we started. It's probably learned more about generating revenue than I did about money. So I did spend my childhood growing up in an entrepreneurial business. I've been an entrepreneur. My first career was I was a lawyer for exactly 1 week, and then I have been an entrepreneur ever since. So I've spent the vast majority of my life being a solopreneur. I was one of those kids that had a business when they were in grade school, and it just always had an entrepreneurial spirit. So I think in terms of learning about money, I certainly learned a lot about making it. I'm not sure I learned a lot about how to wisely save it and do all the other things with it. So I guess that would be the way I'd answer that question.
You know, it wasn't until not that long ago that I truly understood that it was a very different skill to make money than it was to keep money. I just kind of assumed that they were connected, like you make money and you keep money. That's just what you do. And I didn't realize that there's a lot of people who don't even know how to make money. So that's the vast majority. Then you have people who know how to make money and make a lot of money. But even within that group, there's very few of them who actually know how to keep money. And it's a whole different skill set. And that was kind of a major aha and a shift for me. And you kind of even said that, like as a kid, you were taught to make money, but not necessarily how to keep it.
Yeah, I think that rings true for me. Absolutely.
How does somebody be a lawyer for a week?
I was went to law school, I think mostly because I didn't want to get a job, if I'm being completely honest. Then one of the things you do during law school is you summer intern at a law firm. I grew up in Canada, went to law school in Canada. So at least in Canada, that's what we did. And so you get to, during school, they do a very bad job of telling you what being in a career is actually going to be like. And during one of those summers, I learned exactly what being a lawyer was going to be like. And I didn't like what I saw. So I was already 2/3 of the way through, and I decided, well, I'll change my mind and I'll finish up and see if things are different. Once I go back to the law firm, things are not different. In Canada, there is a year-long apprenticeship where you basically are working for a year without being an actual lawyer, and it's called articling. So I finished that up and I quit, but the law firm asked me to stick around for a week to finish up a file that I was working on. And so I got called to the bar. So I now get to say for the rest of my life, I was a lawyer for exactly 1 week.
It's a great story. It comes back to what we talk about a lot when it comes to picking a purpose. I'm assuming you picked law school at a very young age. You didn't sit down with lawyers before or truly get an understanding of what it was you were getting into. And that's normal for everyone. We don't always investigate what does it really mean to do X. We just see the cool thing and go, I want that, without realizing what it's going to cost us to get that.
I learned more about being a lawyer by watching Boston Legal and all the law shows that are on TV before I got into the actual practice of law. So that'll tell you something about where I got my information from.
Well, hey, at least you stuck with it. You did it. You can always have a story to tell, and that's always good. The other thing I found really interesting about you is that you would read a book a day. Now, I like to read a couple of books a month, sometimes 4 or 5, but that's really going out there. How did you come to be?
Well, yeah, it's kind of connected to law school. So when you go to law school, it's essentially 3 years of going to class. They assign you like hundreds of pages of reading every night. And the next day, you have to show up with it all in your head, because if you get called on by the professor and you don't know the answers to the questions, you're going to be embarrassed in front of all of your law school friends. So it was like a rite of passage that you would show up every day with butterflies in your stomach, wondering if today was the day that you were the one singled out to be grilled. So you get really good at summarizing a lot of information day over day for years. And so I graduated law school. I joined business, and I was made a leader in that business very quickly. And so the thing that I decided to do to kind of make up for my lack of experience was to read as many books as I could. I started just naturally summarizing them for my own purposes. And then when I started my own marketing agency, which is not long after that, this was around when social media was starting to become a thing. I would go into to VPs of marketing and business owners, and I would just kind of like how what you have right behind you. I invariably would see there's books on a shelf, and I had invariably read all of those books. And so I would ask them, what did you think about, this idea from Profit First, or that idea from Drive, or what? I'm just picking books I can see in your background. And they would kind of fold their arms, very, very like what you're doing right now, and then sheepishly admit that I hadn't read that book. And so, so I offered just to give them my summaries, and then that one thing led to another, and we turned that into an actual business. At the time, there's like this little niche world of book summary companies. There was only like 1 or 2 of them back then. And so we decided to build a business around doing animated video for it. And so it literally became my job to read a business book a day, summarize what I learned, and ship my notes off to our executive customers around the world. So it was my job. So that's how that happened.
That's pretty incredible. I will say, I do remember most of the books and what's in them. At least one or two main points from them. And I'm not the greatest note taker, but it's definitely changed. And before we get to this, though, you joined this company and they made you a leader pretty quickly in business. What was it that you did that caused that rapid ascension?
I wish I had a better answer for you. It was a family business, so it was pure nepotism. So I grew up in the family, but it was an interesting journey because my father had always wanted me to be a lawyer and didn't want me to join the family business, and ultimately that's what ended up happening. And so it was a small signage company at the time, and I just like I concluded that I didn't want to be a lawyer for the rest of my life. Excuse me. I concluded also that I didn't want to be in the sign business for the rest of my life. So I started a marketing agency sort of inside of that business. And just lo and behold, we had some of the talent in that signage business that you would need to start a digital marketing agency, which would be a designer and a developer. And so I thought, here's some raw materials to do some more exciting things. And that's how I launched my entrepreneurial journey from there.
It's cool. You always seem to find a way to take what you have and turn it into the next step, which is pretty much all we can do.
Yeah, that is literally all you can do.
What's really cool, though, is we're here to talk about AI today. And I think the things that you've done actually have been, in some senses, wiped out by AI. I mean, if you're sitting in class today in law school and that's the game, you literally can go through 500 pages in moments and ask it questions about that particular case and get answers in seconds with AI, which is a dramatic shift. And I know it's causing trouble in the legal industry, and I think it's causing trouble in every industry, in that our old systems were designed that when you first started working, you did a lot of the grunt work. Well, if you don't do the grunt work, how do you learn how to do the work to kind of move up in the company anymore? Because A, they didn't hire you if they're replacing you, and we'll talk about that. And yeah, it creates disruption that I'm sure will get solved at some point.
Yeah, when we get into the weeds on AI, we definitely have some strong views about how work will change, and it definitely is going to change dramatically over a period of years. But a lot of the grunt work will go away, and also almost all of the cognitive work will go away. And so that's the interesting thing from our perspective, is how will business change, knowing that most cognitive work will be done by AI, and what does that mean for businesses creating value? And that's going to be a difficult question for a lot of folks to answer, and more importantly, difficult to adapt to.
We'll get to that in a moment. How did you get into AI?
Sheer desperation, I think, is probably the two-word answer. 2.5 years ago, it came out. It was in November 2022. My business was me reading a book a day, summarizing what I learned, and I realized very quickly that a very easy and simple prompt would compress 8 hours of work. So it would take me 3 hours to read a book, a few more hours to kind of organize my thoughts, a couple hours to write a summary. And so it's like a full day process to get a good book summary. And I was really good at it. It's a super, super small niche, but probably the best book summarizer in the world, because I was able to simplify complex ideas and explain them very clearly. But realize that a simple, please give me a summary of X book, make it 2,000 words, use this tone, blah, 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 and you get back in seconds what is ultimately the equivalent, or sometimes better than what I would have produced. And so it didn't take me long to conclude that, well, if I can do this, eventually everybody can do this. And what does that mean for the value of our business moving forward? So I think that was I was lucky enough because our business was so much information heavy that it was very easy for me to see the writing on the wall. So we pivoted. We started using AI in our business. We started hosting workshops for folks to show them how we were using AI in our business. People wanted to pay for it, and it just one thing turned into another. And we pivoted into an AI training business first, and now an AI platform business as well. So yeah, sheer desperation with a little bit of backstory is the one sentence answer.
So let's start kind of at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it'd be interesting to get your feedback, because I've seen this question asked over the last, year and a half. In the beginning, very few people were using AI. It seems like more and more people are using AI. I'm going to put the word using in quotation marks, because I don't think people use it well. I think they just use it to get basic answers instead of to actually do what you talked about, cognitive work, and to actually help it to be able to do that. So let's start with, how should people view AI at its basic? Like, how does it help people, and what should they think of with it?
There's a number of ways that we've thought about this, and it's more like human beings are having a hard time with the right metaphor for what AI actually is. It is, in some sense, a better version of the worst way to use it is like a better version of Google. And that's how a lot of people use it. So that's the metaphor that a lot of people have in their heads for the way we look at it. And this would be aided by some visuals, but I'll just explain. We've created these 9 AI thinking lenses to help people actually think through, like, what is AI? What's going to happen over the next 10 years? What does it mean? The closest analogy that we can come up with that makes sense. I don't know if this is going to get censored or not, but it pisses people off when we talk about it in this way, which is AI is like an information factory. And so if you think about the Industrial Revolution, when factories kind of came online. So the way the economy used to work in small towns was you had all of these different artisans. You got your blacksmith and your carpenter, and that's kind of how you got things made in that town. And then the Industrial Revolution came in, and factories were possible. And then you could quite literally take somebody off the street who did an apprentice for 20 years as a blacksmith, as an example. You can put them in front of a machine and give them a really good work instruction and give them the raw materials to do the work, and what will come out at the end of the line is something equivalent to what a blacksmith would have made. So the analogy, and it's a one-to-one relationship where we still have a human being running the workflow, number one. The large language model is the machine. Data is our workflows, AI workflows, which we can get into the weeds on that. Just basically step-by-step instructions for the AI to go and do the work. Is the work instruction. The data is the raw material. And then finally, there are some tools on top of that. And so what we're able to do with AI is basically take a less skilled person with a good workflow and have them produce equivalent work of somebody who is much more in the previous world skilled at that task. So in some sense, it's a replacement for almost every task that currently can be done in knowledge work. And yeah, I think I'll stop there. But we can get in the weeds on like, what does that mean and what is possible today versus next year and so on. But that's kind of the way we describe it. And every business owner's job is going to be to figure out how to maximize their information factory. And that's the core way value is going to get created inside of businesses.
So what I've heard, and maybe this kind of flows into what you're saying, is AI is not going to replace people, but people who use AI will replace people who don't. Is that a fair summation, or maybe it's a little too positive?
Well, yeah, I think it assumes that people are not going to get replaced, but they are. So I think that's number one. Like, people will get, for the same amount of work that you need to get done today, you will now, if you know how to use AI well, you need less people. So then the business decides, do we want those same amount of people doing more work, or do we want to have less expenses? Like that's the decision that will be made. And so I think that that statement is true. You're not going to get replaced by AI, but by somebody who is using AI. I think it's a little too abstract for most people to understand. I think there is no world in the next 12 months through which you are allowed to work at a company and not use AI. I just don't see how that would be possible. And it's that kind of process has started to make its way throughout the economy with like 2024 was all about you must not use AI in our company, especially in larger companies that are locked down. And there's still some large companies that will not allow you to use AI in doing your work. Literally about a month ago, there was a memo that was released by the CEO of Shopify, and people who are in the AI space will have known about this. Most other people will not, but basically did a 180 saying you must use AI or you will not have a job at this company. So I think, and it's just logically, the outcome is very logical. People who use AI are more productive than people who don't. And and to the extent that business owners have a duty of care to their company to generate both a short-term and a long-term profit, it would be negligent for them to not mandate that people use AI.
And regardless of what a business owner wants, if your competitor creates efficiencies through AI and undercuts you in pricing, you're out of business anyway. So you're going to have to adapt. That said, I find most small business owners, though, struggle to adapt with stuff like this because they're so in the weeds of running their business, they might get run over.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. It's both very easy to adopt AI, but also very hard. The technology works if you get people to get them trained well and quickly on how to create these workflows, which is like the equivalent of creating standard operating procedures before AI. But this time the AI creates the standard operating procedure, but then also it's an AI powered standard operating procedure. So the AI is actually you're both documenting the work and giving instructions to the AI on how to do the work at the same time. You need to carve out some time to do it. Like that's really the key. And so we create this idea called the daily AI habit, which is you wake up in the morning, you decide, here's what I'm going to do today using AI to figure out what is a workflow I can use today to make my job a little bit easier and go a little bit faster. You do it. And then at the end of the day, you document how it went, how much time you saved, and what the impact of that was on your day to day. And so it becomes this open and closed loop. And we've created a platform that helps organizations do that. And we have found that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that if you get your team to use AI, you will generate massive productivity gains. The problem is the behavior change. That's all that is literally all that is left in this game.
So how do you get people to change behavior? Because I work with a lot of small business owners, and that's not easy.
Well, I think you're seeing it with the Shopify memo, right? It's a mandate. If your company needs to file taxes get filed. If your company needs to prove that you brought your people through sexual harassment training, the company mandates that people go through sexual harassment training. So the Shopify memo was basically mandating you must do this or else you will not be employed at this business any longer. And so I think there's the carrot and the stick in order to generate behavior change. I think this is the gains through which you will get and the competitive disadvantage you will be against if you don't is large enough to suggest that you should mandate this in your business and then follow through with, if you don't start doing this, there's repercussions.
So to me, Shopify is basically a software company, right? So in an environment like that, I could see how do you implement AI. What do you do with the local plumber?
Pull out your camera, and when you come into a problem you can't solve, take a picture and ask AI how to solve the problem. Like those are actually a lot of those businesses, like a lot of, and we've got case studies of like HVAC companies and like a whole bunch of businesses that you would think wouldn't adopt AI quickly, and that's where they're getting massive gains. So that the idea that only technology companies can adopt this at scale is just It's bad. To your point earlier, it's bad critical thinking.
This episode of Richer Soul is sponsored by the Profit Answer Man podcast. If you're a business owner who wants to scale and grow, increase profits, or want to have strategic conversations around your financials, then check out the podcast. You'll learn how to work less, increase cash flow, increase profits, and build reserves to help you weather storms. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. We're going to talk about that in a second. It's funny because I have rental properties. And unfortunately, the way they built our one rental property, there's no way to fix the faucet without ripping out the entire tub because you couldn't get behind it. And he's like, I can't figure out what the cartridge is on this thing. And he wanted some astronomical amount of money. And I'm like, let me think about it. I went over, I took a picture, and I didn't even use AI. I used Google Lens. Google Lens said, this is the faucet. And then I said, okay, what's the cartridge? My guy went and fixed it for pennies over what the other person did. And that's a classical example of what you're talking about. And I know dealing with a lot of people in the trades, trying to get their workers to follow their processes is not always easy. And everyone's got their own process, but by bringing this into it, it's definitely a game changer. And it also lost me trust with that company because I'm like, you're the expert. I'm paying you a lot of money and you don't know how to figure out what the faucet is. I mean, it was a major brand. Come on, cut me a break. You said something, though, is people have to learn how to do critical thinking. The problem is, I would say, and I don't know how far this goes back in our education system, we stopped teaching critical thinking. We stopped teaching people how to do that. We started teaching them how to answer test questions that in today's world, Google could do, AI can crush. How do you take a person who doesn't necessarily know how to critically think and teach that skill so that they can use AI? And I say this because what really shifted for me was when someone said to me, AI is the smartest person in the room. It read all your books behind you and it knows what they all say. If you ask it a question, it'll give you an answer in a moment.
Yeah, I think it goes back to behavior change again. So I'll give you an example. I coach a lot of really smart people on how to use AI. And almost always when they're first starting to, and they're good critical thinkers, when they first start to use AI, we'll go like a week between sessions and they will bring a question to me where the obvious answer is, well, you should ask the AI whether or not, or how to do that. And so there's this behavior change where you need to start with AI first. And I know AI first is a term that a lot of people are using, but that would be quite literally the definition is whenever you're starting a task, including, I don't know how to do this, or I wonder what I should do next, you start there and then you let the AI guide you through a process of critical thinking. And to your point, the reasoning models, especially the latest ones, and especially if you have unlocked the unlimited versions of them where you can ask them unlimited questions, it is a far better, at the very least, a far faster reasoner than 99.99% of the people on the planet. So if you know how to help your team use AI well, you have now upgraded their capacity for critical thinking to almost world-class level as well. And so it's a misnomer that even we need to, like, I hear that a lot of time from educators and from people who are like upset that, you know, these kids these days, right? And that statement with they can't think critically. We can solve that problem very easily to a level at which would be greater than they ever would have gotten to had they been taught critical thinking for decades in school. So I think it's a misnomer that that's going to be a huge problem in the future.
I will say education is ripe for replacement because AI can probably create and teach 100x better than any classroom, and you get one-on-one in your style of learning. And if there's a problem, it doesn't mind telling you 100 different times, right? You mentioned the version that has the higher levels. Is that the $20 version of ChatGPT or the $200 version of ChatGPT?
You'll get some expanded. I don't know exactly what the level. I'm referring to the $200 a month version, which for executives, like if you can't rationalize $200 a month for this, you're not trying hard enough. That's the one I'm referring to. But even the $20 a month level will give you some access to the top level reasoning models. To your point, though, just a quick aside. There's a school that was created in Austin, Texas. It's called 2 Hour Learning. Here's just a quick example of the power of AI in education. They have, and I have no affiliation with them, so this is like a free commercial for them. They teach their students the academics in 2 hours a day. The AI teaches them the stuff in 2 hours a day. And then the rest of the day is based on projects and whatever they want to explore. And their test scores are through the roof, like 99 percentile across the board for every single student at the school. So, and there may be some selection bias because they're probably getting like the most extremely gifted students to begin with. But there is a lot of evidence that AI can make the education system much more efficient and effective and teach kids how to build and live for this future that we're going to be in. It's a passion space for me as well, because I've got 2 daughters who are in high school, and I'm fairly concerned that they're not going to get the right education they need to be ready for a workforce that is already having a lot of trouble getting entry-level kids into jobs. So it's a real problem and a real opportunity in that space.
And they're still in school? I mean, what I mean is they're still in a classroom. You haven't yanked them yet.
Yeah, I guess I don't have the intestinal fortitude to rip them out. So I'm unlikely to do that, at least today. But we are moving one of our daughters to a school that has an AI program in it. So not completely all the way, but they're at least teaching kids how to use AI rather than saying we're going to expel you if you do. So I think, there's the saying that the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. And that appears everywhere, schools, it appears in companies. So, to the behavior question, the AI is powerful enough now that if you don't mandate it in your company, you're quite literally making a mistake.
And I agree with you. I think people are still slow to adapt. And I think if some big players come in and adapt, it's going to be a game changer. Like things are going to wipe out quickly across different industries. And I know you came from the law industry. To me, that one's easy to wipe out because you don't need to read all these depositions and all this stuff. You can go much faster. You can ask questions, and even the AI can ask questions and put together the stories and also discern when the stories don't connect, where there's, different answers to the same question or that type of stuff. So that's phenomenal. If people are going to become so efficient, though, it almost begs the question that we're going to replace a lot of people. Do you see that happening where people just don't have jobs in the future?
I think that's one of the dystopian views of the future. I think there'll be an adjustment period where companies they haven't figured out what to do next, right? They haven't had like, well, here's a new market space we need to go after. And so they really literally only need some fraction of the same people to do the amount of work that they're actually doing today. I think what will happen is that after that, they will find, companies have a desire to grow. It's like it's baked into physics in the universe, right? We want to grow. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, there will be an adjustment period, and companies who will win will find new market opportunities. They'll need bodies running AI in order to go and take advantage of them. So I think probably looks like a big drop off and then a slow climb back up in my mind. Or companies will grow without needing to rehire employees. So like Klarna, which is one of the companies that either gets lauded or beat up in the space of AI, have said we're not hiring any more people, and they're having a natural attrition rate, and they've just not rehired, and they're producing the same amount. So it probably looks something like that. And but there will always be new innovations, new things for people to do, and that will be how companies will rehire for roles as they grow in the future. So I don't know. This has happened before, and I think it'll follow the same process that all the other revolutions followed. But it's possible that nobody has jobs. Hopefully not. But it's certainly not. It's certainly one of the options, right?
Well, the flip side of that question is, if nobody has jobs, no one's going to buy what you're selling. And that was kind of a Henry Ford thing. He wanted to pay people more, not because he was generous, but because if people got paid more, they could buy more of his cars. So he got that other half of the equation. And so if people aren't working, then they don't have money. And if they don't have money, it really doesn't matter what your AI is doing because, well, no one can buy it. And so, yeah, I get it. And I think it's just the upheaval of the change and understanding how that's going to come to be. Again, that still really begs the question, those who use AI and use it well and know how to ask the right questions, build the systems, it seems to me that they're going to be the ones who do well. But the other half of it, because I do AI a lot, I realize that AI hallucinates.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't always give me the right answer. And you've got to have wisdom to know, hey, wait a minute, that's not the right answer. So how do we deal with that part of it to know that the answer I got is real?
I think there's a few ways. One is to realize that is true. The AI hallucinates. It's less and less true over time. The reality is it probably hallucinates less than your average employee. So I think there's this idea that if humans make a mistake, it's okay, but if a machine makes a mistake, it's like humans or machines don't make mistakes. So like the whole thing with self-driving cars, right? Like they're already safer than humans, but there's this thing where when a self-driving car gets into an accident, we can't have that. So I think there's a fallacy there in the argument itself. However, there's a few things you can do. One is as you're using, and the example I love to give because it's the example that people love to cite, is lawyers, and because I get to make fun of lawyers because I was one for a week, which is lawyers getting case law submitted into their court briefings that don't exist. That's not a bad AI. That's a stupid lawyer. So if you're using AI where there are critical facts that need to be checked, you check the facts. It still overall does the work way faster than if you were to do it on your own, but go and check the facts. And so there is no room in a process that's critical where you need to get everything right for just pressing a button and letting the AI do it. There's always going to be these checks in, it goes back to the information factory. That's a defect, right? And hallucination is just a defect in a process that you need to figure out how to eliminate. And the better, this will lead into like prompt engineering. The better you run the instructions for the AI, the less it will hallucinate in a process. And that's where a lot of those companies now are spending a lot of their time, is getting that process right so that you can have a process that runs from beginning to end and feel confident that it's going to give you the right answer. But it's like a red herring in the whole argument. Yes, it hallucinates, and so what is my answer.
I will tell you though, it will stand by its hallucination quite well. So you've got to have a little fortitude to call it out.
Well, so it's still an underperforming employee, though, right? And so it's like, hey, like, is this right? And like, if someone has just not thought through a problem right, they will say, yeah, I think that's right. I don't know if you know what you're looking for, you wouldn't just ask the AI like, "Are you sure?" Like that doesn't solve the problem. It's like if you got to get the right answer, you go and check and see whether the answer is right. And there's also many, 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 many things that you run as processes that don't depend on something being 100% right. You go out like creating a new idea for a new product. That's a process that needs verification. You go out into the marketplace, and you see what happens. And so I still feel like it's a massive red herring.
Fair enough. Let's talk about the program you have, because I think that will also help people understand what they need to do and how they can get help and move forward. And before we do that, though, I have this one question that I've always got to ask, because I see a lot of people selling things about how to use AI. I'm like, well, why do I have to pay you? Can't I just ask AI to teach me what to do? But yeah, so I just love your thoughts on that, and then let's go into how you help people.
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. You could definitely get AI to teach you how to use AI productively. I think we have definitely figured out some things that most people haven't in terms of how do you. So we have one track of what we do that gets people going from never touched AI before to deconstructing their entire role, and then giving them the capability to produce an end-to-end AI workflow in less than an hour, and they can go off and be productive. And by the end of the day, they call it shown an ROI. So we have engineered what we do against results, and specifically productivity in a role versus like learn how to do AI. We have no interest in teaching people how to learn how to do AI. We're trying to create better business results for people. And so, yeah, we've used it enough and tinkered around with it enough that you could eventually get to that conclusion, but we'll help you do it faster, and we'll help you do it at scale inside of a company.
So let's talk about the program. What exactly is it? What does it do? How does it help people?
Yeah, we got two versions of our program. One is basically a platform that has three elements. One is a workshop that we bring to a company, and we walk them through just exactly what I told you. We get them to deconstruct their role using AI. We get them to learn how to produce an end-to-end AI workflow, and then we show them how to go off and implement it. And within the first day, they're productively using AI. So that's kind of the first thing we train people on. Then we've got a library of workflows, so pre-built AI workflows across every single functional area of a business. So rather than having to go off and make the workflows, they're just there, ready to use across strategy to products, marketing, sales, all the way through to finance and admin. The third thing is we have a mastermind in that program where we bring together folks who are, for lack of a better word, the AI champion at their company, and we collaborate on best practices and how folks can become more productive using AI. So the platform itself is a kind of a closed loop process that uses that daily AI habit that I mentioned earlier. So after we've kind of installed, quote unquote, the system in a company, people wake up in the morning, they didn't decide which workflow am I going to use today in my job based on what I'm doing today. They do it. They then at the end of the day report what they've done, and that feeds back into a feed and a dashboard where the organization can learn from each other as they're creating this AI first company. So that's kind of like our entry level offering to organizations. And then we also have a training program that is an advanced level training program to help folks create end-to-end workflows in a more in-depth way, tuned to their organization. And, a lot of things we like making sure it doesn't make mistakes and that you're governing it correctly and so on. So it's a way to turn everybody into the organization into what we would call AI workflow masters. So that is the way we work.
Out of curiosity, let's say you put an employee to use one of these programs. Are they good with the $20 version of chat, or do they all need the $200 version to really do this well, or does it depend?
For the vast majority of people, the base model $20 a month version is going to be more than enough. I think executives who are doing a lot of critical thinking will benefit from the top model. So I would usually say get your top level executives the full fledged version, and everybody else in the company the $20 a month version, and you will see, as long as you help them use the AI, you will see massive productivity gains, like guaranteed.
So what else should people know about the program? Like what? Because I don't think they even know what to ask at this point.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of the place where we're starting. We know that this is, for a lot of people, still very new. Sometimes they're scared and worried about how AI is going to impact their livelihood. So we created a program. It's our scholarship program. So the easiest way we have figured out to get people to take the first step is to offer them something of value for free. So we actually offer to one person in every company our top level training. So the Rolls Royce of our training for one person in every company to come in, kick the tires, and see how much progress they can make. And then if that works for them, we would come in and work with the rest of the organization. So they can go to my personal website, sign up for my newsletter, which is stevecunningham.ai. And then that would be where they would figure out how to get access to that training.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to put that into the show notes. We've gone back and forth and we kind of kept pushing a lot of stuff off on AI. We'll get to it in a minute. Are there parts of it that we've kind of missed or that I didn't get back to prompting you with that we need to come back to and continue the conversation on?
I don't think so. I mean, I can sit here and talk with you for hours, I'm sure, on this stuff. So I think, I think again, the imperative for a company, especially on the CEO, is to start, because you're missing out on an enormous opportunity if you don't. You owe it to your people to help them succeed in this world in which they're living, knowing that some of those people are going to go off in their careers somewhere else. If you take leadership seriously, and the development of your people seriously, you need to start now. And I think there's all sorts of kind of tertiary issues we could talk about, like the idea of AI insourcing. I planted in your head before we started the conversation is an idea we could dive into, but I also know we have a limited amount of time.
No, but let's go there. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
So, if you take the thinking all the way through, the most expensive place you can have knowledge work done is in some external agency. So thinking like, the one that most people like to talk about is marketing agencies. So if you have a baseline of, and I ran a marketing agency, so I can speak to this with some level of, I won't hallucinate much on this issue. Let's say that. If you have a baseline, let's just pretend that for a deliverable that gets done, whether it's like a campaign or whatever it is, all knowledge work eventually boils down into deliverables like emails, decks, web pages. Like it's a factory that produces these end deliverables. And because man hours go into those deliverables, you can see how much they cost. We don't usually do it that way, but you could if you wanted to. And so if you imagine that what deliverable costs you $100 from a marketing agency, getting it done internally by somebody in your company would be on average 3 times less expensive than getting it done externally, because most professional services agencies take the salary of their employees, multiply it by 3, and that's how they charge out their time. That's kind of like the general professional service agency model. So, which means it's 3 times more for the equivalent amount of work. It's 3 times more expensive to get it done externally than internally, which has a lot of assumptions baked into that idea. But let's pretend you can get the equivalent amount of work done internally. Then, so that brings it down to $33. So the math is starting to work. Then if you get an AI, our experience has been, if you give somebody internally a good AI workflow to produce that same deliverable, it's now somewhere around 10 times faster with no compromise in quality. And I could demonstrate that to you all day long. And we have thousands of case studies of people reporting that to be true. That brings it down to $3.33 for something that previously would have cost you $100 externally. You can then, so that's assuming you're still using a subject matter expert, like I said earlier, like someone who would catch a hallucination, right? So someone's quality checking this along the way. It's still 10 times faster, which means it's way less money. Take it further. Once you have that workflow fine-tuned enough, you can then hand that off to it, and you know that it's going to create a consistently good result without the subject matter expert having to check it. You can hand that off to a virtual assistant, which then is about 10 times more or less expensive than that employee. So now you're down to 33 cents. And then once you have figured out that there needs to be no human involved, which is an agent, that's a fully autonomous agent, you're down to something like 3 cents. So there's this value chain of work that's going to get compressed for every professional services agency where the AI can do the equivalent amount of work that the agency will do, because it would be negligent of a business owner to look at that math and say, we're not going to try. And so, which means that they will try, which means that we will figure out where the real value from professional services firms actually is, in-source everything else, and then which is going to mostly mean 90% of the work that agencies and all professional service firms do today will be wiped out. Because it is possible, and if it's possible, it will happen. It's only a matter of time. So that's like the math behind the information factory idea. And that is going to, like, the professional services market is somewhere in the neighborhood of like $6.3 trillion. And so you just need to go and look where there is opportunity to figure out where AI is going to have a big impact. And that's a huge, huge market. And so that's what we mean by AI insourcing. And that'll be like a cat and mouse game that gets played over time, because external service providers will need to figure out, well, what else do we do to make up for that work that we're going to lose? And that's where new value will get created. So it'll be this dance, I think, that happens over time, but that will happen. And I think most professional services firms do not see that coming.
I would agree with you. I work with marketing firms. I know a lot of people in the industry. They already saw a lot of disruption, I would say 23 into 24, for a variety of reasons. One of them was shifts in the economy. Two is AI and people bringing the work back in. Three, I think there was a very low barrier to getting into the marketing industry. And so you just had increased competition, which normally takes place. The other thing is just the other things that are evolving, like Google changes their algorithms a billion times, and it's becoming harder and harder between that and the way Facebook has now, you don't get personal information. So it becomes harder and harder to target your client. So the marketing agencies aren't able to deliver the ROI they used to be able to. So it's like there's 100 different things coming together, and they're all coming at 100 miles an hour, which tends to get a bit overwhelming through all of that. No doubt about it. And so now I'm hearing people are bringing people in because they can take over more of the marketing. And a lot of what you talked about, we've implemented with regards to how we process this podcast. There's still parts that we do, and there's still different things, but it's definitely much better than it's ever been. And I think we're about to go through another iteration too. But I know there's other parts of the thing that I have to look at, and there's parts I still can't, wrap my head around of how it's going to dramatically change the world.
I think you just gave a good example of, like, this podcast is a process in your business that you run, and you're stripping out as many costs as you possibly can. And because it's possible to do that, and you will continue to find those things. But the leap that most people don't make is that that's going to happen for literally everything. So any cognitive work that gets done, it will ultimately, as soon as it crosses the threshold of the AI can do it at an equivalent level, then a human expert, the work just gets sucked into the into the business because it's no longer required to have a subject matter expert do the work. And that's why I don't think most service firms have either figured that out or they have figured it out and they're just holding on for dear life, hoping that no one else will notice.
And us as humans tend to do that, don't we?
Yeah, it's natural. You want to extend your runway as much as possible, and that you're going to fight it as long as you can. And I'll give you an example. There was a copywriter. I tend to get trolled a little bit for the comments I make about AI, and copywriters in general are typically feeling under attack, so they attack back. And I had set up a debate. This was a thought leader who had written multiple copywriting books and was ready to come and he was like attacking me in public and then DMing me like the opposite, like, please stop like telling everybody about this. I'm worried. I said, well, let's do this in public because I don't have a different public and private persona. I'm not going to debate you in public and coddle you in private. So let's have a debate. And he agreed. And then about a month later, this was just recently, he's like, okay, I give up. Like, it's happening. So there's this, and I don't want to debate you anymore. And there's this process through which everyone's just going to have to come to the realization that much of what you've done the way I described it is I've been through this myself. The AI destroyed my business. The business that I would have gladly done for the rest of my life, which is walk around, read books, and think smart ideas and send them out to people. Like, that was fun. That my identity was wrapped up into it. I enjoyed it. It was a good business, and I gladly would have done it for the next 20 years. And overnight, it's just gone. So I've been through like the ego death that you need to go through. And that's like probably the hardest part is whatever I did in the past and I trained my entire career to do is no longer valuable. That's probably the hardest part in all of this. And it's the one thing that I think slows this whole process down, which for some people is probably a good thing, because if it did happen overnight, it would be a disaster for everybody.
Lots of changes coming and lots of impact to the economy, to money, to work and everything else. And I'm going to stop trying to guess at what the outcome is and just learn to pivot in the tide and let it carry me to wherever it goes.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing you can do. And that's why I think a lot of the discussions about like, is this good or is it bad? And like, if you talk about things in general, you can very easily get caught up in what might happen and what should happen. And the reality is that it's just math. It's just money. And we live in a system that is geared towards maximizing for money. And the sooner you accept that fact and do the math, you can very easily see what's coming. And you should just respond to that to take care of yourself. And first, maybe your family second, your business third, and then like quite literally everybody else. Like, don't worry. And the further you get out in that spectrum, the more you're going to get lost in spending time worrying about things you have no control over.
And we humans tend to do that quite a bit.
Stephen Covey made a career out of telling people about the distinction between those things. So like just, the circle of concern and the circle of influence. And yeah, you can only do what you can do.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
I wish I had these questions beforehand to think about it. I think it's cliche, but my purpose, at least right now in this period of my life, is to make sure my daughters make a really good transition from school to whatever it is they decide they want to do. And that kind of fills me with a sense of purpose and an abundance mindset, because I want to make sure that they have the very best of whatever it is they want out of life. So, and I've found that living with an abundance mindset is just way easier than doing it any other way.
And that makes sense. We purposely don't give you the questions up front. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
How to focus on in the context of a business, I'll use an example. Would be truly focus on solving problems for customers, and I've created this value equation where it's on the top is whatever result is valuable divided by how fast and easy can you make it for them to get it, and that has clarified a lot of my thinking around what we do for folks, and in particular, focusing on the fast and easy part is what people want. So you can just always, or at least for me, it's helped me focus my time and energy on things that are productive.
And I think I've seen that somewhere in a book, but I can't remember which one. I could have to ask AI. But yeah, that concept is definitely big. And this last one kind of fits in because you've got kids almost or around this age. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be? My older daughter is 16. So I got 2 years to think of a better answer than whatever I'm going to say right now. I think it would go back to, like, if you're going to make some major life decisions based on what you think you might like to do. I would strongly urge anybody who's 18 to, whenever you're making those life decisions, like what career you're going to get into, as an example, go and spend some time doing the thing before you make that decision. I spent a lot of my career chasing things that I thought looked cool or would be fun to do, when in fact the doing of them sucked the life out of me. And so I think that would be my one piece of advice. And I forget whether it was from a book, one of the psychology books turned into like a popular book. It's like, if you can't do that, go and ask somebody who's recently made the decision that you're about to make and how well that decision went, and go get their advice. But I think for the most part, find a way to experience the day-to-day of what you think you're getting into before you make that call. And I agree with you. And I want to commend you, though, for walking away from law after a week, because most people wouldn't have the courage to do that. And so congratulations on not sticking it out and having a miserable life for you.
Thank you. Well, it's certainly, I think it was a good decision, and I'm happy I made it.
If people would like to learn more about the program, the courses, how do we do that?
Head on over to stevecunningham.ai, grab a spot on our newsletter, and we'll send you information about all of our programs, but more importantly, the scholarship that we're offering for the first person at every company to get access to our top level training program. And we'll love to see you there.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It was a great chat. I appreciate it.
I hope these episodes on AI are helping you to think differently about the future and how to harness it in your own way. Let's face it, AI isn't coming, it's already here. And the people who thrive won't necessarily be the smartest, but the ones who know how to adapt, leverage, and apply these tools. Steve's got a simple learn, apply, prove model, and he shows you how to do this stuff step by step. If that's of interest, go check him out. Again, we're talking about how to thrive in this world, how to adapt, move, and change in a constantly changing world that we can't always control. Here's what I encourage you to do. Pick one area of your life or your business where you can experiment with AI this week. It could be streamlining a task, exploring something new, or just having a conversation about something you're working on, and see how AI can help you achieve that and more. Now, one thing you could use AI for is what we're going to talk about next week, which is creating the vision of your life for the future. We've got Corey Kupfer for that. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.